Hello and welcome to another episode of Promote the Hell Out of It. My name is Misael Trujillo and this is the podcast where I talk to people worth promoting about subjects we should all be talking about. And this is a special episode because it is episode 1 of season 4. And I really can't believe we've got to this stage. It's been a great year that we've been doing this podcast so far. I am so proud of everything I've learned personally, of all the guests who have been on the show, and really happy that they've been so willing to give their time up so selfishly so that we can all learn more about their areas of expertise. And 2, I have to say thank you to anyone who supported the podcast, given it a share, left us a review, because that is what not only keeps us going in terms of listeners, but really makes it easier for me to find the energy and time to get this done. Obviously, another huge thanks to our sponsors, Nextstand, who have made this all possible by helping us out. They are absolutely wonderful. The links are in the description, as well as a cheeky discount code for you all. But without any further ado, let me explain what this episode is about. If you have been following the podcast up to now, you may have heard me speak about Trusted House Sitters. It is a service we've been using for the last year or so, and it means that we get to travel and stay in people's houses looking after their pets whilst they go on holiday. This works absolutely great because it means that the pet owner is left knowing that their pet is being looked after, and we get to travel and save loads on accommodation. I am really excited for you all to learn more about this service, and I talked to Angela Laws, who is an award-winning community manager for Trusted House Sitters and has been working with them for over 10 years. It is a wonderful conversation. We talk about the reality of pet sitting. We talk about how the community has changed and grown over the last 10 years. And we talk about the difficulties that they have faced, as well as what is needed in order to join this lifestyle and really make the most of it. So yeah, I think that's the longest introduction I have done in a while, and I think it is deserved because we are up to episode 31. But I really would love to hear from all of you in terms of what I can be doing differently, what you want more of, what you want less of. Anything like that would really help me out. Anyone who has sent guest suggestions in, we are working on getting that sorted. It takes a while, obviously, to coordinate everyone's time frames. But thank you for reaching out, and please continue to do so because it is amazing for me. Yeah, so here it is, the wonderful chat I had with Angela Laws. Angela, I am so happy to have you on the podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well, Miz, and thank you so much for inviting me. This is really a great pleasure, and I'm really excited to be speaking to you.
No, I am really excited to talk to you too. I think a great place to start, and there's a lot I want to touch on, but a good place to start is with your introduction to Trusted House Sitters, if that's okay.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's one of my favourite subjects to talk about. And it all started in the very beginning, about 10 years ago. I was house and pet sitting, and I started because I lost my own dog, and animals are a joy to me, and they fulfill my life, and as they do many people. And I was house sitting, and I had an email come through one day from this new company that was starting, Trusted House Sitters. And I was so curious, and I'm one of these detective people that if I want to know something about something more than I'm seeing, I'll do everything I can to find out. And I actually did my sort of detective work and finally connected with Andy Peck, who started Trusted House Sitters. He was in Brighton. I was in Wiltshire doing a house sit. At the time, I was living in Canada. And I tracked him down, called him. He came to where I was sitting. We started a conversation that lasted almost all day. And at the end of it, he said, would I be interested in joining him and helping him bring Trusted House Sitters to the marketplace. My background is in sales and marketing and PR, but my passion for animals and for people and visiting places, all of that combined. But what it was, Miz, is there was this young man who wanted to build a community, a global community of like-minded people who on the sitter side loved animals so much they would actually go and care for them for free. And that resonated with me, so much that I said yes. And that, as I say, is how it started it, and the rest, as they say, is history.
That's amazing. When was that, if that's okay?
That was 10 years ago. It's actually 10 years ago next year. So Trusted House Sitters is 10 years old in 2020.
That's incredible. And so when you started house sitting, were you already using Trusted House Sitter, or was that completely new and developing at that stage?
No, it was completely new and developing at that stage. When I started house and pet sitting, I was actually living on Vancouver Island, and it wasn't through a platform. It was done through a chance meeting. And all of these things happen in our lives for a reason. And it could be that you find out what that reason is within a day. But it could take 15 years when you find out what that real reason was. And for me, the reason was I had my own dog, which was a Springer Spaniel, Holly, who'd lived all over the world with me. And she was terminally ill with a brain tumor, and I was living on Vancouver Island. And my son came over for Christmas and New Year. And we went from Vancouver down to Seattle, but I wanted to keep Holly at home. I never, ever put her into kennels in the whole 14 years we had her. And I wanted to keep her home. And I actually found this pet sitter on the island who would come and stay with her. And that's what happened. And then when I lost Holly, this pet sitter, a chance phone call, she called me to see how Holly was. And I burst into tears and I said, sadly, we lost her. And she said, Angela, I do this for so many people, and the need is so great and I can't fit them all in. She said, how would you like to join me and become a pet sitter? And I said, I'd never thought about it. And then about 2 or 3 days later, she called me and she said there was a young widow who lived no more than 10 minutes away from my home. She'd lost her husband to cancer, and they had a business together, and she was going to have to go to Toronto for a 2-week meeting and a conference. And they had this Cocker Spaniel called Charlie that they'd bought when her husband was going through chemo. And she didn't want to put Charlie in kennels, but she really wanted to keep him at home. And she said, would you go and look after Charlie? And this was literally a 10-minute drive from my home. And I said, I will, let me go and see her. And I did. I went and looked after Charlie for 2 weeks. The thing about that was, not only did I help, his owner travel and be able to keep this beloved animal at home, it was so healing for me. It was absolutely cathartic. And it was like I got back so much more than I gave. And that's what started me on this journey. So when I met Andy, I was actually pet sitting through another platform, but still doing it for free because that's what I wanted to do. So meeting Andy was like the start of this 10-year journey with Trusted House Sitters.
And that's really interesting, because the fact that you were already doing it for free when Andy proposed what he was starting with must have resonated with you so much already, because that's quite rare to find people who are already looking for that specific situation.
Absolutely. But you know what? I think what you do, I don't think, I know what you do is these journeys and these lessons that you learn in life. I mean, with Holly, just quickly, she lived overseas with us. We lived in India for 6 years and Africa and Singapore and Vietnam and all in that part of the world. And Holly came overseas with us when she was just a puppy. I took her to North Africa. And during that time, we would move constantly. And whilst packing up my worldly goods in a container, like sofas and things like that, didn't give me any angst at all. It was, what did I do with Holly sometimes? Because there were occasions, like when we were living in India and I had to go to Singapore for 6 months. I couldn't take Holly with me because they had quarantine in Singapore. And so I had to find a solution. And this happened on many occasions during the time that I had her. And what happened was this network of animal lovers and friends and connections that we had through our life, they stepped in and looked after Holly when my biggest worry about, how was I going to care for my animal, and they stepped in. And so that's actually that was the pattern for what I wanted to do, because I'd known what it was like. And here I was getting, help from people that wanted nothing in return other than to actually make sure that Holly was happy at home, she was safe, and I could actually do what I needed to do with peace of mind. That's what we do with Trusted House Sitters.
Absolutely. And there's a few elements that I'd love to touch on from what you've just mentioned. But just going back right to the start, you mentioned that you'd never put Holly in kennels, which I think is great because there's such a horrible situation. But I think it's maybe good to highlight why it's so much better for the pets to stay at home than to go to kennels, for anyone that might not be aware.
Absolutely. I mean, the one thing about animals is they are creatures of habit. They are safe, they are happy. And when they're at home and when they're kept at home, absolutely nothing in their life changes. The only thing that changes is the human caregiver. So their routine, their smells, their familiarity, their safety, their confidence, everything stays exactly the same. And you know what? We care for many, many rescue pets. And those rescue pets cannot go back into a boarding environment. If you did that to them, you'd almost be saying to them, they don't know because they can't talk and they don't have no choices. We make those choices for them. And to take a rescue pet from a safe, happy environment that they finally found and put them back into a boarding environment would just be putting them back to where they had been rescued from. And we don't want to do, we really don't want to do that. And so keeping them at home, you have this carer that comes in, you tell this carer knows exactly what these animals, what their needs are, everything about them, their routine, and that stays exactly the same. And that is what is the most important thing. And because you do this, you and Jane do this, that when you go into a home, they will bond far easier with another human, than they would anywhere else into another environment.
Yeah, it's so true. And the thing I did want to touch on is, how did you find looking after someone else's pet for the first time? Because it can be very different to having your own pet, and how people's routines change and everything like that.
First and foremost, what we do, you have to be an animal lover. I mean, you can't do this unless you are. And so I think you go in and the animals are far more intelligent than we are in some ways. They actually know who likes them. And I've never ever looked at it as somebody else's pet. I've just looked on them as an animal that I want to give love to, that I want to care for. And I think when you give that out, then they know that and they give back. But the other important thing is that through the process, that when you first connect with an owner that you may go and sit for until it's all confirmed, but through the process, they will tell you all about those animals, so that when you go into the home, before you arrive there, you know their routine, you know what they need, you know whether they've got special needs. And you don't ever accept a sit or go and care for an animal unless you're 100% confident that you can meet those needs and you can meet those expectations of the owners. And I just think, you go in there, and when you see that tail wagging, or you see a cat sitting there looking at you and say, okay, you're my servant now, I might, sort of say hello, or I might not. But that's fair enough because it's their home. But no, I never see it as somebody else's pet, because while I'm there, they're actually mine. And I, like a lot of sitters that I speak to, when we leave, there's a tear.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I get annoyed at Jane sometimes because I'm like, I don't want to get upset today. I've got a lot to do. Please, come on. But no, it's so true.
Oh, absolutely.
And the other thing I wanted to touch on, for anyone especially who's new to the site or doesn't know it very well, is how it works in terms of there's a lot to stop people who aren't thoughtful continuing to get sits because of the rating system. How have you found that encourages people to be secure using the site?
Okay, from an owner and a sitter's point of view, from an owner's point of view, you know what? This is actually a process, an arrangement built on trust. That is the first thing. That's first and foremost. You have to have the ability to trust to a degree. But for an owner, that trust is then supported by all the information that they have available to them about the sitter, about reviews and verifications and the profiles on the site. So an owner coming to the site, the one thing that we need to let them know, and the one thing that needs underlining, is they never ever lose control about who they invite into their home. They never lose control about who's going to come and look after their pets. And during the process, until both parties, sitters and owners, are 100% confident that this is the right choice on both sides, then it's not confirmed. It's only confirmed when that's been reached. But for sitters who really want to come to this and get involved in the lifestyle and who love animals and feel that this is something for them, and you don't have to travel 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to do this 365. You can be somebody that just does it once or twice a year. It's for everybody. It's exactly what you want it to be. But for somebody starting out, the most important things are references, and you can get those external references. So the way it works, we're a membership-based platform. We bring together the two parties who then make their individual choices and connections to ultimately, have a successful sit on both sides. But we also have membership services. We've got a team here, and they're 24/7, and they will give all members help, of both owners and sitters. But it's all about communication. It's all about talking to one another, and there cannot be too much of that.
It's so true, and it leads on to the next thing that I wanted to touch on, which is, I guess, a big part of any sharing economy type situation, and is how it also encourages community. Not just this one-off service that you do for someone, but all the friendships that you gain along the way. You mentioned that the first time you sat, not for a trusted house sitter, it was for someone that was 10 minutes away from you. You must have so many situations where you've grown real deep friendships with the people that you've sat for.
Oh, absolutely. And that is the joy. And that's the one thing that and we are now a 76,000 strong global community. And we are a community. We're not a membership. We're a community. And the stories that we have and those friendships that are being built. But from my point of view, I have got lifelong friends that I've met through Trusted House Sitters. One comes to mind that I was living in Vancouver and I applied for a sit in LA, and it was to look after a little Shih Tzu called Stella. I applied for it, and I obviously got the sit, and we went down there. And the couple, Eileen and Brian, before we arrived, we were their first sitters, and before they arrived, they went round their entire community where they lived and said this couple from Vancouver were coming down to look after Stella while they went to Israel, and would they just drop in? I later found out with a conversation with Eileen that actually she wanted people to make sure we were welcome, but she also wanted to make sure that we were okay in another way. So she was having her friends come in and see this couple. Anyway, she said that, within 3 or 4 days of us being there, she was hearing from these friends that this lovely couple from Vancouver were looking after Stella so well, Stella wasn't even missing her. That was 8 years ago. Sadly, we lost Stella about 2 years ago. But Eileen and Brian, they have been up to Bainbridge Island when we've been sitting there, and owners have said we could have friends. They've come up for weekends. We've met them in the UK when they've come over. And that is a friendship that will go on forever, even though we don't have Stella. And that's being replicated everywhere. And for me, it's such a unique part of what we do, and something that is very, very special.
Absolutely, I agree. And I want to touch on, in the rest of the conversation, a little bit on the incredible job you've done with building this community, especially on social media. But before we go on to that, it would be great to maybe get any tips that you have for people that are looking to come on as sitters, because I've been talking to a lot of people who are really interested, and I think that obviously there are some things that you need to to have in place as a person and personality types if you're going to take this on?
Yes, I mean, obviously, as we've said before, you have to be a pet lover, but not just, sort of that you've had pets and you loved yours. You've got to be embracing every sort of other people's pets as well. On top of that, you have to be a good communicator. You also have to like people because you're going to be dealing with people. And also you have to be sincere and professional about this. It's almost like applying for a job. Well, it is applying for a job, and you have to put yourself in that place that, I mean, every owner that you apply to, unless they know you, until they get to know you, it is somebody that the only way they can identify with you, and the only means of knowing who you are, is your profile and then the communications that you do. So creating this profile that actually says who you are, what you're about, and identifying the points that can give an owner a real sense of, I want to have a conversation with this person. This person is like me. I can imagine this person stepping into my shoes and stepping into my home. So it's the creating this profile. It's adding the references. And these references can come from anybody that can attest to your trustworthiness, your reliability, and they need to be references from people who do not mind being contacted by an owner who wants to, sort of check your references, because we encourage that, because this level of trust, and it's like trust is earned, trust is gained. And so to start with, if you're open enough to allow that owner in to find out more about you, then that tells them that this is somebody who's sincere and wants to, and who I can trust to come into my home. The other thing too is, on the site we have so many sitters who've been doing this for a long time, and it's almost like, go and look at their profiles, go and see what it is that, it's almost like mentoring through a profile, and gain, your experience from their experience, and see what it is that owners are looking for. The one thing I always say to sitters is, always keep an owner's hat on. Imagine what you would want to know about somebody that was coming into your home, that was going to look after your two most precious possessions. We have 3, many have children, but we don't deal with children. We're just pets and homes. But think about what it is you would want. What would you want to know? What it is that you're looking for? And also, membership services on the site. They will give you as much help and advice. And there's the blog, there's articles on the blog. Do your research. And the other thing too is, when you apply for a sit, don't apply for any sit. Many sitters are sort of taken in by these exotic locations. They're sitting in their apartment, wherever it is, thinking, and a sit comes on the site in the Caribbean, or it comes in Costa Rica or anywhere, and they go, oh yeah, I could do that. You know what? It's a long way to go to find out you get there and it's actually not what I really wanted. So start locally and pick the right sit, not just a sit. It's got to be one that, your experience, it will allow you to fulfill. And so, walk before you run. That's exactly what I would say.
Yeah, no, it's completely true, and I can relate to that a lot. We've been quite fortunate that we've chosen everything to be very close to us and allowed enough time. But there are days where you see the weather outside in the UK and you're like, oh, wouldn't it be nice to take a sit in Thailand?
Yeah.
But that's a lot of planning and effort and logistics.
And it is, and cost. I mean,
and cost,
yeah, you've got to think of that as well. So, but you become a savvy traveler and you become a great planner. I mean, I, like you and Jane, I'm doing this full time. I mean, I work for the company full time, but I pet and house sit full time. I don't have a home. I sold my home 4 years ago this May. And so for me, sometimes it can be logistically challenging to get my sits around the Brighton area so I can come into the office. But it is a lifestyle, and you have to fully embrace it, but you also have to know yourself really, really well.
That is so true. And I think realistically, for anyone who thinks about doing it full time, it can also be very tiring if the sits don't fall right, for example.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the thing about it is, with all of my experience, and I'm sure you and Jane have experienced this too, with all of my experience and how many reviews I've got and everything else, I don't always get the sits I apply for. I mean, and sometimes I go, really? You didn't want me? But I don't. And the reason being, it's nothing personal. It's just that owner connected with somebody that for one reason or another, there was a great connection there and they felt comfortable. So you don't always get the sit you apply for. And so it is a process of putting this into place. And between sits, we have gone into Airbnbs. I mean, we do that. And so it's a great lifestyle, but you have to be incredibly flexible, but you also have to be very patient. So there are attributes that you really do need.
It's true. And in all honesty, that's what makes the site great. Part of what you mentioned, that people don't always choose the people with the most reviews. Otherwise, we would have never got started.
I know.
It is that someone connected with us and gave us that chance. A few people did. And by the time you know it, you've got a few reviews, and then it does make it easier. But as you say, you can never guarantee that you're going to get anything.
No, that's right. And the other one thing I would say that's really, really important for first time, sitters who come to the site that are new, we do internally and sort of our comms that we send out to members all the time. We're encouraging members to look at new sitters. Because everybody has to start somewhere. We didn't all come with all of these reviews. There was a time when I had none. It's taken me this time to build this up. So we encourage owners to look at new sitters. And that's where the new sitter, that's where your profile and your references and completing the verification systems and the verifications that are on the site and being open. But the thing about it is that, you do start somewhere and you do start with the ones close to home and short ones, and if you're flexible enough that you can do a sit that comes to the site that is last minute and that you're local and you can get round to meet the owner, then you almost, you place yourself in such a position of advantage that's the way to start. As I say, it's to start locally and close to you and then build out. And the other thing too is you have to also know yourself and find out if this is the lifestyle that's right for you. It isn't right for everybody, and we know that, but it's an amazing lifestyle when you get into it, and it just gives back so much.
Definitely. And I think that is part of the journey, isn't it, is being able to tell, because also different times in your life might be good for it, whilst at other times it's not great. But the beauty of the site is that it's so multi-purpose anyway. That we've talked about it before. Even if we stopped sitting, we'd want to have pets then. So then we can still use the site from another angle, which is part of the community building aspect of it, I guess.
Absolutely. Last year in 2018, it was the first year that we actually had the Sitter of the Year Awards. We've actually just launched the 2019 awards, but we had 2018, we had Sitter of the Year, and we had and we only went out to owners that had a sitter in 2018. So that was a small proportion of the owner members we have on the site, and we got 1,000 nominations in. I mean, that 1,000 then equates to at least 2,000 people that have connected. It's probably more. You could look at 4,000 people that are connected around the world and had these amazing, experiences. And this is what it's about for travel these days, Miz. It's people want experiences. They don't want to just travel. They want to travel with purpose. And that's what pet and house sitting does for you. But these stories that came in, there is a quote. I have a terrible memory. I mean, there's things that I remember and things I don't. But there's a quote that came in, and it was from a sitter called Agnes, and her with her husband and her 2 children. They left Poland to house sit, and they decided to take a year out to let the children experience travel. And they decided to look at pet and house sitting as a way of facilitating that travel. And so they went to the United States, and they had a sit in Portland, Oregon. And when they arrived there, this quote from this story that she said, and I will not forget it, and I use it all the time. She said, when we arrived at the house and they opened their door, they didn't just open their homes to us, they opened their hearts to us, and I will never forget the trust. And that just encapsulated what is going on and what is being replicated in 130 countries, because that's where we are around the world every day.
Yeah, and it's incredible. Actually, our first ever sit we did in Liverpool, and the lady was supposed to meet us at the house, but she was running late because her car had broken down and she took it to a mechanics. So when she got there, we'd made friends with her 3 younger children who had let us into the house, who could called ahead. And it was just what you've mentioned. It's this situation where we spent the rest of the night, and Jane's still very good friends with the younger kids on Instagram and stuff, and we're always connected, because it is a very unique situation to let someone in your home and know that it is basically going to be their home and they're going to be looking after your pets. So it does create a unique bond with most people.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, where else would you have a situation where, somebody would give you the keys to their home, that you've never been in there before, that you've communicated by email and through the site, and you've Skyped and you've done all of that, but you get there and they give you the keys and this is your home. I mean, that trust and that dynamic is just so inspiring. I mean, and we see that happening every single day across the site.
It's true. It's funny because actually that was the first experience the lady in Liverpool we sat for. It was her first ever time using Trusted Housesitters. But the second house we did, they were really experienced with it, and we got there expecting to spend the evening with them, and they basically gave us the keys and left, and we were like, oh, okay. they knew what they were doing, and we chatted so much that we did know them so well before getting there anyway. It's a unique experience.
It is indeed. I mean, how many times have you and Jane sat down with somebody that you've gone to pet sit, and you're sitting there, and during the conversation you find out that you have so much in common? I mean, so many times I've sat down with owners and it's turned out that, we like the same music, we like the same food, I mean, it's just, and it's this whole thing about being drawn to like-minded people. But the one thing that I always say, and the one thing that is so, so important to remember, and we all know this when we talk about the human experiences, the one thing about this 76,000 strong community around the world and growing day by day, none of us, we wouldn't be talking today, and none of us would be in communication and in contact if it wasn't for one thing, and that's the animals. This community would not exist without animals, because we have very, very few owners that come to the site that just want home care. We have a few, but not many. But generally it is 99.9% owners looking to keep those beloved animals that are their family members happy at home.
Yeah, definitely. The next side of things that I'd love to touch on is the incredible community you've built online. And you mentioned that you obviously came in to Trusted House Sitters very early on into its development. what was the main hurdles you faced whilst trying to build an online community like the one you have?
Knowing the technology and the platform and how to do it, and all of the sort of the strategy. It wasn't the content and it wasn't the sharing, because if you have a community of people that are like-minded, and we have the most amazing things that we share, and that's animals. I mean, all of that, providing you're talking the same language and you give people the content that they want, then they will come to you. Because when I took over the social media side, I mean, I had been sort of pre-digital. That was my business, was sales, marketing and PR. But then I had to learn the digital side. And I think the thing that some marketers on the social media and digital side forget is that you can't market to people socially. They don't want to be sold to. They want to be brought in and connected with. And provided you connect and I mean, with our Facebook page, for example, there is no comment, no like, no interaction that goes unanswered. We have some of our posts have got like 1,800 comments, and they're all liked and they're all responded to, and that's what it's all about. It's actually connecting and communicating. So our Facebook page, we now have almost 250,000 followers, and that started like 12,000 we had, so it's been built up, and that's all been done organically. And it's actually been done by giving our followers what it is they want to see. And it's giving them humor, it's giving them content, it's giving them, it's bringing them in with the emotion. It's been a learning process. I mean, and I'm still learning, or we're still learning. Our Instagram feed is really, I mean, it's done so well. Our Instagram account, we're now sitting at 40,000 plus followers. And it's because we care. It's because we connect with people. It's because we give them what it is they want to, they want to see.
And I mean, it's also obvious, and it definitely helps that you are so passionate about personally the company and what it does, and that's obviously going to leak onto all the work you do for them, because it's very clear from the conversation we're having.
You know what? I have the best job in the world. And I would actually do this for free. In fact, I did for 4 years when I first joined Trusted House Sitters. I mean, I was so passionate about what we were doing, and so passionate that, people could actually come to us and they entrusted their animals and their homes to us. But on the sitter side, that we're giving people the opportunity to have purpose in their life, and absolutely everybody needs that. I mean, whether you are 21 or whether you're 81, you have to have something to get out of bed for in the morning, and you have to be able. And also the other thing too is we are connecting people, and you touched on it, Ms, about the community. We are connecting people, and today we're so fractured as a human race. And people are spread all over the world, and they've got families that are living on different sides of the world. And so people want to connect, and they want to have something that is meaningful. And that's I believe that's what we do. And on the social media side, what we're doing is sharing content that we've done for years and years and years, but through digital, through the digital process, we can get to so many more people. We can bring them in, and we can reach more than we ever used to before.
I agree completely, yeah, and it's part of the beauty of the internet, because there are so many elements of social media and how we interact with things online that are causing negative effects to society, that it's so good to highlight the positive ways it can be used, and this is such a clear one it is so obvious how it's connecting people and how valuable it can be if used the right way.
And people know when you're genuine. People know when a product, because Trusted House Sitters is a product. I mean, it's a digital product that we brought to the marketplace, but consumers know when you are, when something is real. They know when you are genuine, and that's what we have. That's what we give, because as much as we want to be successful financially, of course we do. If we're profitable, it allows us to do one thing. It allows us to help more pets stay happy at home. It allows us to help more owners travel with peace of mind. It allows us to help more sitters realize, travel aspirations or wanting to have purpose in their life. So yes, we do need to be profitable, but we also need to do that in such a way that we keep real, that we keep the heart into it. And that is something that I bring to this company every single day. Because when we talk about figures and we talk about, success and we talk about growth, behind every single one of those numbers is a human being and an animal. And that's what we must never, ever forget. And that's what we don't forget. I wish everybody that comes into contact with Trusted House Sitters, be it as a member or be it because they found us, could actually come into the office and see what happens in here. What happens in here with this team that we have on a daily basis is inspiring, because they are young people and people of, we go across all ages, but they're a team of professionals, dedicated, talented, professionals who absolutely love what they do and have a passion for what they're doing. And the passion, the ultimate passion, is not the dollars. The ultimate passion is to give our consumer a product that is worthy of them and that works for them.
That's so encouraging to hear, Angela. And if we're looking at the growth aspect of things, it's quite clear from using the site that it's so useful to be able to access so many areas in the world for listings. But has there been some cultures that are more accepting of the whole mentality of Trusted House Sitters than others? Has it been more difficult to reach certain areas?
Yes. I mean, our message is the same, but our language has to be different. We have to talk to different markets in a different way. I mean, our fastest growing market at the moment is the United States. But the thing about the US, when you look across different cultures and different countries, the level of trust, that's the one thing that differs. You have, like in Australia, they're more open and they're more trusting. The UK, when you get to the US, that is one of the biggest challenges that we have. You have, and there will be cultures where this will never be it will never happen, but that's okay, because the ones where we are successful and the markets where we're growing, it's just the message and our challenge is to get that message of trust across but I also think it's done at a local level. It's done where people can identify within where they're living. And yes, I mean, there are challenges ahead, but there are opportunities.
Definitely, that's so nice to hear it phrased that way. I guess the last thing that I'd love to touch on is, what have you got? Is there anything you can share with us that is coming next for Trusted House Sitters?
Yes, I mean, we are looking at working more closely with influencers and affiliates. We in the past, we've worked with affiliates and we've worked with influencers, but we now have a dedicated team that are going to be growing that. But when we're talking about working with influencers, they have to be the right influencers for Trusted House Sitters. We're not looking at influencers that because they've got a following of 100,000 or 500,000 on Instagram, that they're the ones that are going to go and be the voices of Trusted House Sitters. They have to be right for our brand. They have to be right for animals. They have to be genuine, and they have to, they have to be, they're guardians of our brand, and we don't want that brand sent out there with just anybody. But working together, we can really create a much bigger global community. So influencers and affiliates, and we are really focusing on the US next year in 2020, and podcasts, and and getting into the community on a grassroots level, and we're also looking at ambassador, teams of ambassadors, brand ambassadors, because when we spread this news, and you and Jane do an amazing job, and you know this as well as I do, that the voices that are the strongest and the voices that support what we do the most are those of our members that are using us, that are living the lifestyle, that are doing this every day. The corporate message is great. It goes out there and every company has it. However, it's the voices of those that are using it that are the strongest. Because, when you're talking peer to peer, I know you do, but I know when I'm talking to people and we're telling them what Trusted House Sitters is and how it works, there will be this light bulb moment that somebody will look at you that's never used it before and go, really? That's what you do? And they sit for free and go, yes. But why do they do that? And I go, because they can, but because it's a passion that they have, and we get back far more than we give. And you know what? If you're somebody that doesn't get that, Ms., this isn't for you.
Definitely. It's so true. It's so true. And it's so linked to the conversation I had with Benita about sharing economy, because there is a certain type of people that understand that we need to work together and help each other for a common good, and that helps everyone. Some people just don't get that. So they don't, and they never will.
No. And I listened to your podcast with Benita, and of course Trusted House Sitters sponsored Generation Share, because we really, this is the big yellow book of hope, and it's got the Trusted House Sitters story in there as well. And it is about these ordinary people doing extraordinary things. And you know what? That doesn't have to be on a level that, attracts the world. It can be on an everyday small level, which is what is happening in our community every day. These stories and these connections and these, this sharing, and that's exactly what is happening. The one thing that I will say to anybody listening is, you will see Trusted House Sitters, you'll see the messaging, you'll hear it being talked about, and all of these wonderful places you can go to and these places that you can stay. But it is not a free vacation. If somebody is looking for a free holiday, this isn't for you, because it comes with responsibility, it comes with commitment, and it comes with, sort of something that is not about going somewhere and staying somewhere for free. That's not what it is at all. It is much deeper, and it's much more profound than that.
I think that's a very good ending comment, because I think it's so intrinsic to everything that comes along with it. And I think if anyone honestly tried doing Trusted House Sitters and are looking at it just in those terms, they will have a really horrible time of it, and they will be very tired and not enjoy a minute of it, and probably not do a second tier.
Exactly.
That doesn't help anyone.
No, but it is an amazing lifestyle, as you well know, and I will be doing this until I can't do it anymore, which is not for the foreseeable future.
I have enjoyed talking to you so much, Angela. Thank you so much for your time.
Oh, it's been my pleasure, and thank you so much for inviting me, because it's just creating awareness and getting the message out there, and growing our community, because more good things could happen.
Definitely, and it's a very important message to get out there. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for checking out this episode of the podcast. Please, if you have any questions about the service or the conversation in general, or any of the conversations I've had on the podcast, send me a message. I will do my best to either reply myself or send a message to the guest and ask a follow-up question. If you have any other advice for me for the podcast or any guest suggestions, any subjects that you're interested in and would like to learn more about, again, I would love to hear from you. It really does make my day. I loved this conversation with Angela Laws. All the links to Trusted House Sitters are below, as well as to her social media, as well as to our sponsors Next Stand, as well as to anything else that has been mentioned. All the links can always be found below, and if they can't, it's because I've been stupid and forgot, so just let me know and I will get those added. Anything else that I have missed? I don't think so. It is coming up to festive season, so everything is getting really busy, and I'm sure you can all relate to that. It took a while to figure out when this episode was coming out because I'm trying to backlog recordings at the moment so that I don't have a huge gap over the festive season and the new year when everyone is obviously really, really busy or hungover. So hopefully it all works out and we will get episodes out every single week. But without any further ado, I will leave you to whatever you are up to and catch you next time.